Okay, since the computer will not let me do a streaming broadcast tonight, thank you, Rugrats out there who are sucking up all the bandwidth off of AT&T. I'm going to do a recorded version of Haff in the Morning because I can't do it live because the computer can't buffer through your crappy games. You know what? All right, just let it out, Joe. Just let it out. Okay, we'll begin the program in 3, 2, 1. Coming up on this edition of Haff in the Morning, let's talk about Donald Trump's missing emails. Speaking of Donald Trump, 2 of his supporters are accused of voter fraud. And, oh, by the way, I blew up the car. Details on these stories, plus a whole lot more, coming up on this edition of Haff in the Morning.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, succubus with goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. Dump it. Charging into a goblin's nest, some goblin vomit and slop and blood on it, especially up to his ankles. Trump charging into a goblin's nest, some goblin vomit and slop. Goblin vomit and slop. I'm not expecting him to not get dirty slop. Kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, succubus with goblins, in bed with a goblin. Kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins. I just want to catch him in bed with a goblin, in bed with a goblin, in bed with a goblin, in bed with a goblin. I just want to catch him in bed with a goblin, bed with a goblin, bed with a goblin, bed with a goblin.
Happy Halloween, my friends. Welcome to an evening edition of Haff in the Morning for Monday, October 31st, 2016. I'm your host, Joe Hafter, with you for the next couple of hours on this program as we talk about anything and everything. And as luck would have it, if you heard very briefly my attempt at doing a live show, I gave it up about 2 minutes into it, probably not even that long, because for whatever reason, AT&T Internet sucks, at least in terms of reliability. And I know Internet is bound to fail at times, but and I'm asking for a lot of bandwidth. But still, when I want to do a live show, I want bandwidth, damn it! I need my bandwidth, and I don't have the bandwidth. So I'm going to have to do the show this way for tonight. And so my apologies if you were hoping for a live program. Drop me an email at haffinthemorning@gmail.com. That's HAFFinthemorning@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out my website. It's going to have a fresh look, probably by the time you hear this on Tuesday morning, which is when most of you will probably get it for the first time. And check it out, tinyurl.com/HafterMedia. tinyurl.com/HafterMedia. Well, it's a little past 8 o'clock here in the Central Daylight Time Zone, the only time zone that matters to you and me, as we make our way through this Halloween night, and hope you've had a safe and happy Halloween. It is my second favorite holiday of the year, my favorite growing up. I mean, any other day you dress up and go begging for candy, you're likely to be told, "Hey, get out of here, you little rugrat. Go get your own candy. You can afford it." But anyway, hope you've had a safe and happy Halloween. And boy, what has happened since we last met? The last live show I did was a brief one last Tuesday morning. I'll explain what happened. My roommate and I went shooting out to the shooting range a week ago tomorrow morning on Tuesday. And I was going to record a generic show last Monday night for Tuesday morning and just throw in all the elements, and the computer would take care of the rest while we were out, relaxing, shooting our guns. Well, for some reason, Monday night, when I came back to my bedroom, I was a little tired, but I thought, I'll go ahead and do a show now. That way I can be sure to have a program on for you Tuesday. But for whatever reason, the Spreaker Studio software in my Dell laptop would not respond. All the other programs were fine, at least all the ones I tested out. But for whatever reason, the Spreaker Studio software would not work. I thought, this is weird. It would bring up the screen, but I couldn't load anything. Nothing would play. Well, okay, I'll shut it down, shut down the computer, and give it a complete restart, because I hadn't done that for several days. I thought, well, maybe the program just has a glitch in it. Brought it back up, same result. All other programs would work. Spreaker Studio software still wouldn't respond. So okay, well, damn. I don't really want to use the old mixing board, which is available online, because then I'd have to anticipate all the sound bites that I'd want to use, all the music beds, and part of doing a show, especially doing a live show, or even doing one that's trying to sound live, is this the spur of the moment spontaneity. I'll think of something. I'll have an idea before each show of what sound bites I want to play, but sometimes I'll think of something better at the moment. And with the mix the setup that I have now, I could just throw that in there at any point. And I have a lot of data just for this program alone. I mean, that's including old shows from my previous podcast and old sound bites. And putting all that together, it adds up to over 100 gigabytes of information. As a matter of fact, on a cloud drive, I have 115 gigs, roughly, of material. That's including over 2,000 sound bites, music beds, all my music in digital form that I've got in here. So it takes a while. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to reformat this computer, because I didn't really want to use my old laptop, which would have taken some reconfiguring to do, which I could have done the way I used to do shows. But so I reformatted my Dell laptop, and it took a lot longer to restore the data than I thought. So I'm going to have to create another drive at some point here, hopefully in the near future, in which I'll just have the essentials. The essential sound bites, intros and outros, and things of that nature, to be sure that I have everything that I need. And it took until literally a little after 3 o'clock Friday morning before everything was fully restored. And I started the process late Monday night, probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And it took that long to reformat the computer and to get all the data back in there for this, just for my podcasting alone. Now, the majority of the programs don't take that long to load and install. That was done in a matter of minutes. But purging a 500 gig hard drive and then restoring the cloud drive takes a long, long time. So that's what happened there. So again, I apologize for being tardy and for being so silent and not telling you more about what has been going on over the last several days. So that's why there hasn't been any episode of Haff in the Morning for a little while. Okay. Now, to continue on, let's see here. I'm trying to regain my train of thought, loading some commercials into the system. What else has been going on in our lives? Oh, yeah. I blew up my car. Okay? You're going to love this story. I would tell you, when I trash a car, I go all out. As you know, I've had problems with my Dodge Neon, as I've told you periodically throughout the show. A couple of weeks ago, I thought I had it fixed, at least the coolant problem. Au contraire, mon frère. Anyway, I was still a little skeptical about driving the car because I've had some brake issues, among other things, which have cropped up. After I got the car running again, anyway, when I took it back out on the road, at first I thought, well, maybe it's just because the car's been sitting there for so long. Well, I guess the brakes froze up and things like that, even though I had a massive brake job done a year ago. Well, for whatever reason, the brakes were mushy, and I drove it last week to work. 2 weeks ago. Well, I was running low on brake fluid one night, and I refilled it, I guess it would have been a week ago Saturday, which was on the 22nd. Is that right? Yeah, the 22nd, the last time I drove it. And it got a little bit better, but there were still some pressure differences. I don't know if the brake booster is going bad or if the master cylinder is shot. And anyway, when I got home, a big plume of smoke came out from underneath the car. Well, I just dismissed it as cool air and a hole in the exhaust pipe. I knew better than that, but, that's what I tried to convince myself. Well, the car sat for several days, and I didn't think anything more about it, other than thinking, I just baby it along, I'll get it back to the shop soon enough, get it fixed. Well, my roommate and I have been carpooling in his truck to work last week, which we did Thursday and Friday. No big deal. Well, Saturday came, and I was a little pensive, and there's this little voice in the back of my head that said, Joe, do not drive your car, take a taxi to work, hitch a ride home with a friend, it'll be okay. I ignored that voice. Bad, 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 bad. Well, anyway, I drove it to work, and it started out okay. I mean, the brakes were still mushy. I'm like, okay, well, I could deal with that. I mean, it's not the most ideal situation. Kids, if you don't have brakes, don't drive the car, okay? Well, anyway, I drove it to work, and the dashboard has always been finicky in this car. It has been since the day I purchased it, since the day I took possession of it. Well, anyway, I'm like, okay, it'll be all right. The coolant I haven't had any problems with. I can listen for the gurgling sound if it gets overwhelming. Well, sometimes you smack the dashboard just right, it'll come on. It'll respond. At least the gauges that I need. Which the ones I'm most concerned about are the tachometer, the coolant, definitely the coolant, and the gas gauge. Well, it would not respond, so I was like, okay, just stop smacking the dashboard, you're just hurting your hand. I got about a mile to a mile and a quarter away from my house, and at first I thought, well, maybe it's just my imagination, maybe this road's a little bit bumpy, but I felt a shimmy starting to develop in the car, and I thought, is my wheel coming off, or what's the deal here? I really should not be driving this thing because it is scaring me. It's not that windy out here, and I've driven in higher winds than that, and it never felt like it was bucking or at all. Well, I kept going and going, and the brakes were getting worse. I made a quick couple of errands, and that was stupid on my part to keep the thing running because that allows the heat to build up, more pressure to build up in the coolant system and the radiator. And anyway, I managed to get to work. Of course, there was some jackass behind me tailgating me because I was not going the speed limit, because when I got to my place of employment within about a mile of it, I was losing power. And I could tell I was losing power because I think what was happening was that I was not only parallel with the way the wind was blowing, which was blowing back up into the hole in my exhaust and the tailpipe, because there's a hole in the tailpipe where my roommate and I put on a temporary coupler to, at least make it drivable. Well, I think that has just enough of a hole in it that air was flowing back into it at the same time that it's trying to push air out. And, of course, that compromises the vacuum to the point where you can't get enough of a seal in there to maintain compression, which is slowing down your acceleration. So I've practically flooring this thing. It's barely moving. I'm probably doing maybe 25, 30 at best in a 35, 45 mile an hour zone. Timed it just right to where I would not hit anybody and nobody would hit me at a yield sign. And this jackass comes up behind me again, tailgating me. And I'm thinking, really? If a car in front of you is moving slow, there's a reason why. And pushing your envelope just because you're impatient doesn't help anyone else. And so anyway, I pull into the parking lot, and I'm thinking, there's no way in hell I'm going to get this car home under its current condition. There's just no way. And there's a little speed bump as I get to my place of employment, which is a food manufacturing plant. That's essential what I want to say about that. And anyway, there's a gap in the speed bump where I purposely drove my car over for the past year, because if you hit it too hard, I'm bound to scrape that coupler off and break my tailpipe. So anyway, I tried to time it and position it just right. Well, I was off a little bit, and I scraped it. And pretty soon I see smoke coming out from the back end of my car. I'm looking through the rearview mirror. The brakes are virtually non-existent now. I'm pushing as hard as I can. The car's not slowing down, so I try to shift it to neutral. This guy is still behind me. Thankfully, he turned off. And I see a parking space. Well, some of my coworkers are talking on a couple of spaces away from me, and I don't want to hit them. And I'm still not sure how I want to stop this car. So I swing it around hard left, hoping I don't hit the truck in front of me, and I slammed it into neutral, or I'm still slamming it in neutral. I slammed it in the park, which is a stupid thing to do, because I'm sure I probably did significant damage to the transmission in the long term. And shut the engine off, and they were just talking to me. He's like, hey, maybe your heater coil's all this. I'm like, guys, I don't want to talk about it, all right? So I shut the engine off, let the thing cool down, and this thing is gurgling like an overheated coffee pot. I mean, it's just going... And I'm just looking at the dashboard. I'm thinking, why am I driving this piece of crap anymore? It is done for. Well, I get out of the car, and of course, they were pointing at the fluids that are flowing out from underneath it. I have a pond of radiator coolant mixed with water and so forth, and the car is basically done for. I'm like, screw it, I'm done with it. And I was just like, I'm not driving this thing anymore. So I went in, and of course, I don't think I heard anything anybody said to me for about the first hour that night. And anyway, there's the demise of my 1997 Dodge Neon. Now, thankfully, through the help of my roommate and one of his ex-wives, her husband now is a used car salesman, has made a deal with me on a 2007 Ford Focus. And the car is beautiful. I'm looking forward to test driving it, hopefully tomorrow or in the next day or so, to go test drive this thing and to go get my Neon and trade it in. You know, it's worth maybe a couple $100 at best, but nevertheless, I'm going to get this thing decommissioned. And I'm going to say on a personal level, on the one hand, that Neon has saved my ass on so many occasions and so forth. On another, I'm so glad to finally be getting rid of it, because it has been a money hog roughly for about the last year to year and a half. And that's partly my fault for slacking up on maintenance and stuff, you know, because things have come up. Never, ever, if you can afford it, give up on car maintenance, because it comes back to bite you big time in so many ways. And to add insult to injury, when I got home Saturday night, going through my mail, I got a renewal notice from Progressive Insurance. And even though I was anticipating it because I saw it on their when they sent me an email a couple of days earlier, that my rates are going up on this Neon. So I got to talk to them about when I get insurance on my new car to either lower that rate or find another company, because I'm not happy with Progressive. I haven't had any tickets. I haven't had any accidents. My car is a hell of a lot older than it was a year ago. I can't see any reason why my car insurance rate should be going up that much. I was paying on average $35 to $40 a month. Now it is up to $55 a month. That is a significant increase. And I'm not very happy with Progressive. As far as I'm concerned, Flo can go suck it. All right? I know that was a bit rude, but still, she's just a spokeswoman. Figurehead for the company, but it just really bugged me. But anyway, there's the demise of my 1997 Dodge Neon. And another reason why I am so glad to get rid of it is the car is an emotional burden. I'm about to reveal a secret in here. I'm about to break a secret that I have kept for the last 9 years, almost 10 years. But I feel it's safe to say here because I want to make this is, after all, my autobiography, and slowly I am revealing secrets on here. Now, I'm not going to reveal intimate secrets, but anyway, the car was actually a gift from an aunt and uncle back in April of 2007. I had been out of a vehicle for roughly 6 months, probably at that point, when I gave up my 92 Olds 88. Well, anyway, an aunt and uncle gave me the car back in April of 2007. My mom's youngest brother was a gift, and I am eternally grateful for it. Unfortunately, at times, families don't always get along. Communications break down, feelings get hurt. Well, after my grandparents died, even prior to their death, we had some falling outs in the family, and I was essentially caught in the middle of it. And I won't go into the details as to why, but just to say that I kept my distance from my grandparents for very good reasons. And I hate that because they were good grandparents to me, but they were not the most honorable of people based on some stuff that I have learned over the years. And some of the stuff that they did, they should have at least faced criminal charges for what they did to someone that I love very, very much. And I'm going to leave it at that. Okay? I'm not going to reveal all of they did. Well, anyway, my uncle, being their youngest son, I think is in conflict in coming to terms with what actually happened and the truth about his own parents. So that's where we stand today. But anyway, to finally get rid of that Neon is to say goodbye to a significant part of my life. And I kept that car way longer than I wanted to or should have. It's not to say I'm not grateful, but every time I looked at it, it was a reminder of keeping other secrets that hurt even more. And anyway, to get this new car here in the next few days, I am looking forward to a new chapter in my life and a chance for a clean slate here. So, with that being said, let's move on with the program, okay? Speaking of which, the first thing I want to talk about is another missing email scandal. And I will say this about Hillary Clinton and the email scandal. It is largely... Oh, thank you, computer. Really? The file is not available. All right. What? What is going on here? Okay, for some reason the computer cannot find the story. Well, I guess maybe I won't be able to... I thought I had it earlier. Well, anyway, lost my train of thought. I want to say this about the Hillary email scandal. There is no scandal. This is the GOP stirring up crap that does not stink, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, there was some poor judgment issued by the Clinton administration, or rather by Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State, in regards to her handling the email. But to me, there is no concrete proof to say that there's any criminal or nefarious activity going on here. May have been poor judgment to use email servers in her home for government purposes, but what have you uncovered? I mean, for people that are saying that there's something going on here about, there's something that she deleted classified emails. Do you know specifically what was classified, what wasn't? I mean, for all we know, she could have exchanged 30,000 emails about recipes or talking about the weather. So until you know for sure what was in those emails, the exact contents of those emails, you don't know jack shit, folks. We don't know jack shit about what's going on. Nevertheless, this is a Republican wet dream. And but what I have found in my research, and thanks to a little bit of quick typing here, is there are now reports that Trump's companies have destroyed a number of emails too. Okay? Over the course of several decades, as a matter of fact, Donald Trump's companies have systematically destroyed or hidden thousands of emails, digital records, paper documents demanded in official proceedings, often in defiance of court orders. Can we say contempt of court? These tactics, exposed by a Newsweek review of thousands of pages of court filings, judicial orders, affidavits, from an array of court cases, have enraged judges, prosecutors, opposing lawyers, and the many ordinary citizens entangled in litigation with Donald Trump. In each instance, folks, Trump and entities he controlled also erected numerous hurdles that made lawsuits drag on for several years, forcing courtroom opponents to spend huge sums of money in legal fees as they struggled, sometimes in vain, to obtain records. This behavior is of particular import given Trump's frequent condemnations of Hillary Clinton, his Democratic opponent, for having deleted more than 30,000 emails from her server she used during her time as Secretary of State. While Clinton and her lawyers have said all of those emails were personal, Trump has suggested repeatedly on the campaign trail that they were government documents Clinton was trying to hide and that destroying them constituted a crime. The allegation, which the FBI concluded was not supported by any evidence, is a crowd pleaser that Trump rallies, often greeted by supporters chanting, "Lock her up." Trump's use of deception and untruthful affidavits, as well as the hiding or improper destruction of documents, dates back to at least to 1973, when the Republican nominee, his father, and the real estate company battled the federal government over civil charges that they refused to rent apartments to black Americans. The Trump strategy was simple: deny, impede, and delay while destroying documents the court had ordered them to hand over. Shortly after the government filed its case in October, Trump attacked. He falsely declared to reporters that the feds had no evidence that he and his father discriminated against minorities, but instead were attempting to force them to lease to welfare recipients who could not pay the rent. Now, the family's attempt to slow down the federal case were at times nonsensical. Trump submitted an affidavit contending that the government had engaged in some unspecified wrongdoing by releasing statements to the press on the day it brought the case without first having any formal communications with him. He contended that he had learned of the complaint only while listening to his car radio that morning. But Trump's statement, sworn statement that is, was a lie. Court records showed that the government had filed its complaint at 10 a.m. and phoned him almost immediately afterward. Excuse me. The government later notified the media with a press release. Or prosecutors responded to Trump's affidavit by showing that he had fudged his claim by using the term formal communication. An acknowledgement, they said that they had received what only he would characterize as an informal notification, which they described as an intentional effort to mislead the court and the public. But the allegation slowed the case. It required the government lawyers to appear in court to shoot down Trump's false charge. The Trumps had more delaying tactics, such as Trump announced in a press conference that his family and their company were bringing in a $100 million countersuit against the government for libel, anonymous tenants, and community leaders. he said, had been calling and writing letters expressing shock at the government's outrageous lies. Once again, motions, replies, and hearings followed, and once again the court threw out the Trump allegations. Meanwhile, for several months, the Trumps ignored the government's discovery demands, even though the court procedure in a civil or criminal case requires that each side to produce relevant documents in a timely manner. This allows for the plaintiffs or prosecutors to develop more evidence in their support of the claims, as well as for the defense to gather proof to fight the case against them. When litigation is filed or even contemplated, scrupulous lawyers and corporations immediately impose document retention programs or require that any shredding or disposing of records be halted. Courts have handed down severe sanctions or even criminal charges of obstruction of justice against executives and companies that destroyed records because they knew they were going to be sued. Yet when the government filed its standard discovery request, the Trumps reacted as though seeking that information was outrageous. They argued in court that prosecutors had no case and wanted to riffle through corporate files on a fishing expedition. Once again, this led to more delays, more replies, more hearings, and more specious argument thrown out of court. Now, 6 months after the original filing, the case was nowhere because the Trumps had repeatedly ignored the deadlines to produce records and answers to questions known as interrogatories. When the government attorney finally telephoned a Trump lawyer to find out why, he was told the Trumps had not even begun preparing their answers and had no plans to do so. The Trumps also postponed and blocked depositions, refused to provide a description of the records as required, and would not turn over any documents. Finally, though, under subpoena, Trump appeared for a short deposition. When asked about the missing documents, he made a shocking admission. The Trumps had been destroying their corporate records from the previous 6 months and had no document retention program. They had conducted no inspections to determine which files might have been sought in the discovery request or might otherwise be related to the case. Instead, in order to save space, Trump testified officials with his company had been tossing documents into the shredder and garbage. The government dashed to court seeking sanctions against the Trumps. Prosecutors asked the judge to allow them to search their corporate files or simply declare the Trumps in default and enter a judgment against them. The judge opted to allow the government access to the company offices so they could find the records themselves. Now, in 3 letters and 3 phone calls, the government notified the Trumps that this inspection would take place on June 12, 1974. When they arrived at the Trump offices, Trump was there, but he and everyone else were surprised that prosecutors had come and refused to allow them access to documents without the defense lawyers present. A prosecutor called those lawyers, but they were not in their offices. Well, the frustrated prosecutors then gave up and headed back to court. The Trump strategy was simple: deny, impede, and delay while destroying documents the court had ordered them to hand over. Sounds like a repeating song, doesn't it? Well, they were hit with a new delaying tactic. The Trumps submitted a filing based on statements by Trump that radically misrepresented what had occurred that day. Well, he claimed that a prosecutor by the name of Donna Goldstein had arrived at the company without notifying the Trumps' counsel, refused to telephone the lawyer, and demanded access to the Trumps' office. The prosecutor accompanied the Trumps' claim by 5 stormtroopers, then banged on the doors throughout the office, insisting that she and her team be allowed to swarm haphazardly through all the Trump files and to totally disrupt their daily business routine. At the same time, meanwhile, in a move that caused another huge delay, the Trumps claimed that Goldstein had been threatening Trump employees who were potential witnesses. In several instances, the employees signed affidavits stating that they had been subjected to abuse by Goldstein, then denied it that they were forced to testify. Each one of the government's key witnesses, Thomas Miranda, who told the government the Trumps instructed managers to flag applications from minorities and that he was afraid the family would physically harm him, suddenly announced that prosecutors had threatened him and that he had never provided any evidence against the Trumps. These allegations of misconduct, which demanded sanctions against the government for abusing its power, therefore required more hearings. Once again, the Trump claims went nowhere. Well, in June of 1975, more than 18 months after the government filed the case, and with the Trumps still withholding potentially relevant records, the two sides struck an agreement. The agreement, which, like all civil settlements, did not contain an admission of guilt, but did compel the Trumps to comply with federal housing regulations against discrimination, adopt specific policies to advance that goal, to notify the community that apartments would be rented to anyone, regardless of race, and meet other requirements. Excuse me. The Trumps ignored these requirements and still refused to rent to apartments to minorities, something the government proved by sending African Americans and non-Hispanic Caucasians to pose as applicants. The government brought another complaint against the Trumps in 1978, who then agreed to a new settlement. In that case, the government had the financial wherewithal to fight back against abuses of the courts and the discovery process by the Trump family, but many private litigants who have spent their own money and hired their own lawyers have been ground down by Trump's litigation as warfare without rules approach. Courts are loath to impose sanctions where litigants fail to comply with discovery demands. In order to hurry cases along, judges frequently issue new orders, setting deadlines and requirements on parties that failed to produce documents, but Donald Trump and his companies did get sanctioned for lying about the existence of a crucial document to avoid losing the lawsuit. Now, fast forward to 2009, a group of plaintiffs claimed that Trump duped them into buying apartments in a Fort Lauderdale, Florida development by portraying it as one of his projects, okay? The fine print of the dense and legalistic purchase contracts, however, revealed that Trump had agreed only to license his name to the developers, and when the project hit financial snags, he simply walked away from it. In their initial disclosures in 2011, Trump and his company said they had no insurance to cover any of the liability in this case. That was important because an insurance policy lets the plaintiffs calculate how much money a defendant can pay in a settlement without suffering any direct financial consequences. In other words, that insurance lets the plaintiff know how aggressively to pursue a settlement, knowing the defendant will have some losses covered by the policy. While at the same time, a settlement in the then prominent case could have been disastrous for Trump. He faced an array of similar lawsuits because he had licensed his name to developers around the world for projects that later collapsed. In each case, Trump had marketed the developments as his own, a claim contradicted by the sales contracts. A settlement in any of these cases might have encouraged other people who had lost deposits in a Trump marketed development to file lawsuits against him. Well, Trump testified that officials with his company have been tossing records into a shredder and garbage. And this just goes on and on and on. Now, in conclusion, the review of Trump's many decades of abusing the judicial system, ignoring judges, disregarding rules, destroying documents, and then lying about it, is not simply a sordid history lesson. Rather, it helps explain his behavior since he declared his candidacy. He promised to turn over his tax records and his health records, just as he promised to comply with document discovery requirements in so many lawsuits, then reneged on that agreement. As a result, he has left a sparse evidentiary trail that can be used to assess his wealth, his qualifications for the presidency, and even his physical and mental health, his fitness and mental and physical health. Should voters choose him to be the next president, he will enter the Oval Office as a mystery, a man who has repeatedly flouted the rules. He has solemnly told the country to trust him while refusing to produce any records to prove whether he speaks the truth or has utter contempt for the truth. And that is why Donald Trump cannot and should not be the next president of the United States of America. And I am Joe Heffner, and I approve this message. And I hope you do too. Alrighty, let's see what else was talk about. Well, since that was a bust, guess I'll delete that file. I should have... Oh, I know why. I think I have a pretty good idea why that didn't work. Alright, let's try this one. Another thing that Trump has been touting is voter fraud. Because anytime you can't win a contest, you got to complain about how the rules were played. A lesson I learned from my late grandmother. Okay? But just days into Florida's election process, 2 women have been busted in separate cases of violating the state's election laws. 74-year-old Gladys Coego, a temporary elections support specialist for the Miami-Dade Elections Department, tasked with opening mail-in ballots and scanning them into the machine, is accused of marking ballot choices that were originally left blank, according to local media news outlets. And in a second arrest, police took into custody 33-year-old Tamika Kurgel, who filled out voter registration forms for 5 citizens without their consent, and then submitted at least 17 forms for people believed to not exist, including several who are dead. Interesting. Now, I'm not saying that voter fraud doesn't exist. After all, this is proof that voter fraud does exist. But on the scale that Donald Trump is talking about is just outrageous. And yet people believe it and buy into it because he shouts loud. You know, just because you're able to shout does not make you an authority. Okay? Usually people that have a shout can't back up their story. Or at least it's of questionable origin. Or they have questionable motives involved here. And Donald Trump is proof of that. Okay? It just really, really bugs me. And speaking of people who bug me, James Comey, FBI director, needs to clean up his mess. Alright? Over the weekend we learned that there's a lot more reporting out there about the FBI director and a letter that he sent to members of Congress notifying them about newly discovered emails that may be pertinent to the FBI's previous investigation in Clinton's use of private email server. Well, we've learned that those emails reportedly could number in the thousands and were discovered on a laptop used jointly by former Congressman Anthony Weiner and his wife, a top aide to Clinton, and were discovered in the course of an unrelated probe into Weiner's sexting scandal. Unfortunately, the latest reporting is often contradictory and confusing. Well, Comey's language is maddening, opaque, and cryptic. In his letter, Comey says that the new emails appear to be pertinent to the previous investigation into Clinton's use of a private server. He also says the FBI is now seeking to determine whether they contain classified information and cannot yet assess whether the material may or may not be significant. But Comey's own declaration that the new emails appear to be pertinent suggests that they are significant, and therefore, in my personal opinion, I think we need to look into how Weiner and his people managed to break into Clinton's servers. They're obviously not secure, and therefore pose a danger to all of us Americans, because what other documents were sent around that time? What documents could have been potentially exposed or even accessible to a novice computer user or just someone randomly with random access to an email server linked to Clinton? You know, that scares me a little bit. And this is where I call into question some of Hillary Clinton's judgment. Now, I'm not saying she should become a IT expert by any means, but she should have had people with a stronger IT experience and knowledge about how to deal with potential problems like this, because you're dealing with government secrets here and government operations, and just to have it out there floating on an email server where a guy by the name of Anthony Weiner, who has made some poor choices, to say the least, in his own right as a government official, and then basically breaking and entering into government property, using it for inappropriate purposes. Yeah, this is the part I have a problem with Clinton. Okay, but again, that if you're going to protect our country, you do need to be able to protect our emails. And this is why I've been reluctant to throw my support to Hillary Clinton. Now, how she handles this mess from here on will say a lot about her character and as our next president, because I firmly believe that she will be the next president of the United States of America. And so that's why we need to clean up this mess now. Now, if there were secrets that got out that should not have been released, then maybe we should consider someone else. But I'm sure as hell not going to support Donald Trump, who is far more public with his thumb in his nose at the system. Okay? But for Hillary Clinton to just kind of sidestep it like, oh, I didn't see that dog pile over there. No, you knew that pile was there. Okay? Or at least should have been suspicious of it. And so that's why I've been reluctant to throw my support to Hillary Clinton. But again, as she has conducted herself in other matters, such as through the presidential debates and whatnot, I think she's a much better choice, at least a safer choice. Now, giving you an idea of how Hillary Clinton has handled emails to date, she said this earlier today.
I'm sure a lot of you may be asking what this new email story is about and why in the world the FBI would decide to jump into an election with no evidence of any wrongdoing with just days to go. That's a good question. And first of all, for those of you who are concerned about my using personal email, I understand, and as I've said, I'm not making excuses. I've said it was a mistake and I regret it, and now they apparently want to look at emails of one of my staffers, and by all means, they should look at them. And I am sure they will reach the same conclusion they did when they looked at my emails for the last year. There is no case here. And they said it wasn't even a close call, and I think most people have decided a long time ago what they think about all of this. Now what people are focused on is choosing the next president and commander-in-chief of the United States of America.
Now, I hope through her reassurances that no trade secrets were released or revealed, but I do take back what I said earlier in the program in that there's no scandal here. Maybe there isn't, and I hope there isn't. But still, it shows a lack of concern or consideration for the possibility that trade secrets were compromised here. In other words, how we're going to be sure that she's going to protect our national interests on a global scale. As Commander-in-Chief, you have to know 100% of the time. But I guess only time will tell. All right, let's see what else has been going on in the news since we last met. On to lighter matters. I haven't watched very much of the World Series. I have monitored the games online and so forth. And because I've had to work for the last 4 days. This is the first 4-day week I've had since March. But on, I believe it's, Friday's game? Let's see. Or was it Saturday's game? I can't remember which. But anyway, one of those nights when Bill Murray, let's see, what's the date on this? 28th? Yeah, I guess it was Friday. When Bill Murray sang Take Me Out to the Ball Game in the 7th inning stretch of Game 3. So if you haven't heard it, I want to play it for you right now.
It's the bottom of the 7th inning, the last chance to order beer. But we didn't come here to drink beer. We came here to win this ball game. I said to the Uber boy, I said, take me out with the crowd. And in order to sing the right lyric, take me out with the crowd, you need to sing it like our greatest American entertainer, Mr. Daffy Duck. So I want you to spray it and don't say it. A 1, a 2, a 3. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the Cubs. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. That's the old ball game. Let's get some runs, suckers.
Anyway, there you have it. Comedian Bill Murray and entertaining the crowd at Friday's game between the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians, both in the World Series for the first time since the 1940s. Nothing else. It's going to be a momentous occasion, to say the least, in history of baseball. Now, football has routinely crushed baseball for years when it comes to ratings, even if it's an important postseason game in the MLB pitted against an inconsequential regular season game in the NFL. So it opened the eyes when Game 5 of the World Series last night crushed Sunday Night Football in viewership. According to Austin Karp of Sports Business Daily, the 3-2 win for the Chicago Cubs over the Cleveland Indians drew a 15.3 rating, easily beating the 11.6 rating for the Dallas Cowboys' overtime win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Even before the World Series, that's noteworthy, as the last time a game from the Fall Classic outdrew a competing NFL game was 2013, and the blowout for the MLB game came against the Cowboys, a gigantic draw, playing against a divisional rival in a game between two exciting young teams with rookie quarterbacks. Now, as part of a larger downward trend for the NFL, which has experienced declining ratings all season long for reasons that everyone has their own opinion about. But yesterday was actually a good day for the NFL. It was one of the better weeks for action, and CBS said its slate of regional games during the day did 8% better than its coverage of Week 8 in 2015. But before you take out your bugle and start playing taps as a farewell to the NFL, just take a deep breath, okay? Here are a few reasons why the World Series would get better ratings than the Cowboys and the Eagles. First of all, Nielsen ratings are weird. You know, the ratings have become standard for determining what is and isn't being watched by an American audience. May not be the most accurate determination. You know, it's a box that goes in about 20,000 homes for about 50,000 viewers who supposedly represent an accurate reflection of the viewing habits of the United States as a whole. Even if it's a good representation of American viewers, Nielsen has had difficulty measuring viewership during the streaming era, with services like Netflix or even DVR possibly skewing data. Also, ratings drops are not exclusive to football. Many are focusing on the decline of football ratings, but the English Premier League has seen a significant drop too. Now, did everyone in America just get sick of sports all at the same time? Not very likely, but viewers have had a tendency to come and go depending on how exciting things are in the sport. Some experts also believe that fans might be watching less because of the presidential election. The 2000 race between George W. Bush and Al Gore had a similar effect on football ratings 16 years ago. Number 3, streaming has pulled viewers away from TV sets too. Television ratings might be down, but streaming services couldn't be more elated with the way Americans are watching football. Just ask Sling TV, which is a live streaming service that negotiated the rights to show some NFL games. Now, if NFL fans are increasingly turning to services like Sling TV and even Twitter to monitor the games, it will keep pulling ratings downward, okay? And plus, the Red Zone is sucking the life right out of football games. For years, more and more fans have turned to NFL Red Zone to watch footballs on Sundays instead of watching one game, compete with several commercial breaks, stoppage of plays, replay reviews, injury timeouts, and other boring things that turn viewers away, while fans instead get zipped around several games for whatever is the most exciting thing happening at that moment. And finally, the NFL keeps putting bad games on national TV. One day after the World Series smoked Sunday Night Football, the NFL doesn't have to worry about its Monday Night Football game competing with baseball. But it should take note of the fact that it's the fourth time the 1-6 Chicago Bears are in primetime in the first 8 weeks. The Cowboys and Eagles are exciting, but the NFL has sandwiched its good matchups with games like the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Tennessee Titans, and therefore suffered the consequences. Okay? And there's also a whole lot of sports going on. In addition to the World Series, there are 11 NFL games, 7 NBA games, 8 NHL games. It's only the 16th time that all 4 major American professional sports leagues have had games on the schedule on the same day, and only the 6th time since 1985. There are plenty of fans who only watch one, but there are much more who enjoy multiple sports and juggle them based on importance and significance. The elimination game in the World Series can win over fans who care about both baseball and football, and hockey and basketball can pull away even more fans who would have otherwise tuned in for Sunday Night Football. So, again, it's just the nature of the beast here. All right. And let's see, is there anything else I want to talk about? I think that's going to be it for now. I want to talk more about Halloween here in just a little bit. But in the meantime, I'm going to take a little bit of a sidestep here. And I have to tell you this funny story. It happened earlier today. Around 5 o'clock, I was, just sitting here watching a little television, doing some last-minute prep for the show. And, of course, I see the UPS truck come up. I hear it coming out. And, man, I got to thinking, this would be a great day to pull a practical joke on somebody and saying you're a UPS driver. Of course, it's kind of hard to get a truck, but, man, that woman in that uniform, whoo, wow. I was thinking some dirty thoughts. I don't know why I brought that up. I don't know why I did that, other than just to stall for a little bit of time here and try to load something else I want to say. Speaking of dirty thoughts, and I haven't been following as much on this show as I did on TTO, on the TTO podcast, which, incidentally, the inspiration for that show has a significance on this date in history. 30 years ago today, the first radio version of TTO that I listened to went off the air on Clicks Radio. But anyway, that was 30 years ago. Bill Cosby is back in the news once again. And, of course, I was a lifelong fan of Bill Cosby up until a couple of years ago. As a matter of fact, I even saw him perform live in Ottumwa 2 years ago. And I've been really disappointed, not just because of his actions, but the fact that he has kept it so well hidden from the mainstream that he is able to put out this wholesome image for so many years. Well, it's unraveling extremely fast. And now, his lawyer, last Thursday, made this statement.
Mr. Cosby has spent his entire life trying to fight against injustice and trying to help other people overcome racism and prejudice. He, through the power and brilliance of his comedy, through the power of his words, and through his countless acts of charity, he has given a generation of Americans the ability to have pride, to have hope. The media has presumed him guilty, not innocent. The media has championed the causes of his accusers with little thought to investigation, with little thought to challenging or exposing the motivations behind any accusations. The time has come for somebody somewhere to shine a spotlight on the trampling of this man's civil rights, and that time is now. A smart man a long time ago said that injustice anywhere is in fact a threat to justice everywhere. Those words were true when they were spoken, and they are true today.
Now, it's really scary, and I agree, and I admit that Bill Cosby deserves a fair shake in court. But how much longer are you going to continue to deny that you, sir, Dr. Bill Cosby, are a sick man who raped and assaulted women on a physical and emotional level for so many years, lied about it to your family, to your friends, and most of all to the public in general. Still, though, he deserves a fair shake in court, and I hope he gets that opportunity. All right, let's talk about some lighter matters here. And, of course, I'm constantly perusing YouTube for inspiration for the show. And today, I came across the scenario of what it would be like if aliens had come to Earth and learned about Halloween, okay? Well, imagine a couple of aliens talking at a water cooler about Halloween and Halloween mask and all that, okay? So I'm going to play it for you right now on this edition of Haff in the Morning, PM edition.
Yeah, it happens every year. It's called Halloween.
So they knock on the door, and then they beg for food?
Close. Candy. Yeah, and when they're adults, they just celebrate with lots and lots of alcohol.
They know their atmosphere is disintegrating, and the humans choose to focus on that?
There's more.
Huh?
The entire planet plays dress up.
What do they dress up as?
Whatever you want. A political official, a funny pun, a sexy crayon.
Ooh.
Trick or treat!
Is that supposed to be me?
No, it's just some random alien.
That is very offensive.
Yeah, agreed. It's in very poor taste, Don.
But didn't mean to offend you at all.
I don't look like that, do I? No. But you look at the eyes, they're all ovally. And my head is not nearly as brown.
No, it's a goofy mask.
The humans will pay for their mockery. Get that out of here! They will pay dearly! They are dead!
You know, it actually does look a lot like him.
Anyway, there you go on this edition of Haff in the Morning. All right, let's see. Coming up in just a little bit, I'll have the Writer's Almanac with Garrison Keillor and the Composer's Date Book, as well as Today in History in just a moment. Right now, though, we haven't checked in with Mike Rowe for a little while, and he has a new segment on the internet, a new edition of The Way I Heard It. And let's see here. I'm trying to find it here. There we go. Anyway, The Way I Heard It. So I'm going to put this over here. So it's called the Anti-Wiener Edition. All right. And so I'm going to play that and have more of Haff in the Morning coming your way in just a moment. So stick around, my friends.
Facebook, hey, how are you? Happy Sunday. Nice to see you again. Schizophrenic day here in San Francisco. Sun doesn't know what to do. It goes out, it comes in, wreaking havoc upon my iris. Apologies in advance for that. Let me ask you something. You need a break. You need a wiener break. Have you had all the wiener you can take today and yesterday and the day before? Are you up to here with wieners? Would you like to hear a story about a man who's not a wiener? By a man who possesses that quality which is the opposite of wienerdom. What is the word? Character. Would you like to hear a story about a man with character? I got one for you, and I'm going to read it forthwith, but not until I remind you of this. These are ballots, and people are posting them on this very page right now. And what's troubling about them is that my name is on them. These are ballots for the President of the United States, and many of you are writing me in. So here's the thing: don't do that. Nothing good can come of it. If I win, you will have elected a man to the office who is completely unfit to serve. And if I lose, which is seeming increasingly unlikely, then you've basically wasted your vote. Hey, buddy, come here. Hold on a sec. Come here. Look who just wandered in to say hello. All right, you might as well vote for Freddie. Honestly, you might as well vote for a dog if you vote for me. Just don't do it. All right, you're a good boy. Here, you sit over here. Having said that, it's our promotion's coming to an end for the RevMark marker. You guys remember the RevMark marker, right? This has been a great fundraiser for MicroWorks for the last month or so. We have raised literally thousands of dollars, thanks to your generosity and your burning desire for a better marker. The RevMark marker allows you to attach your marker to your manly work belt or your womanly work belt, remove said marker, and go about the business of writing things on materials that aren't necessarily paper. I refer, of course, to wood or plastic or, brick, construction materials. It has a reinforced nib. It doesn't wear out as fast as those other crappy markers do. Plus, most importantly, look, it's got the MicroWorks logo on the side. Isn't that great? 10% of every purchase comes back to the MicroWorks Foundation. You go to their website, which is revmarkusa.com, and you enter in the promo code, which is Mike10. When you enter in Mike10, that assures the money comes back in our direction, and it assures you a 10% discount on anything else you might find at revmarkusa.com. Made in the USA. You can also find them over at Maynard's. Where's it, Menards? I think it's Menards, actually. Ever been to Menards? They're nice. I've only been in one or two of them. I don't have one around here, but that's where you can get the pen company, the USA. They're there. They're there with their RevMark markers. Not the MicroWorks RevMark markers. You got to get those over there at revmarkusa.com. Now, the aforementioned story of a man who is not a wiener. Hollywood loves a good prison break. From the Count of Monte Cristo to Cool Hand Luke, America will always root for a man unjustly imprisoned who tries to break free. Which is why it's so odd that Hollywood has yet to tell us the true story of Whit and his remarkable escape from the worst prison in the world. Whit was a model citizen, an Army veteran, and a 40-year-old father who had never broken the law, not once, much less been to jail. Now he was serving a life sentence for a crime he didn't commit and living a daily nightmare that made Attica and Alcatraz sound like a trip to Disneyland. Now, after 3 years of hell, Whit was determined to break free and blow the whistle on the worst prison in the world. First of all, there was the warden. If you thought the villain in The Shawshank Redemption was rotten, this creep was in a league of his own. Warden Haas was brutal, sadistic, and profoundly corrupt. The guards were no better. They beat the inmates often, and for no apparent reason. The work details were cruel and unusual, worse than any Angola chain gang, and the overcrowding was nightmarish. Also the food, deplorable, and in short supply. Like any penitentiary, though, Whit's jail contained a network of inmates who knew how to work the system, and soon Whit would join their ranks. In time, he was able to smuggle in some radio transmitters and set up a communication system within the prison itself. He then tried to broadcast to the outside world, but to no avail. Now, if Whit wanted to reveal what was really going on behind those ominous gray walls, he would need proof. And to deliver that proof, he would need to escape. First, he got himself assigned to a work detail in the prison bakery. Then, he enlisted the help of 2 other inmates. Using dough for bread, he and his conspirators made a mold of the hinges and nuts on the bolted door. The molds allowed Whit to fashion a wrench that would fit over the bolts. When the time was right, they removed the door and made a break for it. Whit took a bullet in the arm, but somehow they made it to the river where a stolen boat awaited. The dogs were in hot pursuit, but lost the scent thanks to the cigarette tobacco Whit smeared over his boots to cover his tracks. Eventually, Whit made it back to safety and told the authorities everything he had witnessed. And at first, no one believed him. But Whit was a convincing witness, and thanks to the photos and stolen documents he provided, there was no denying that something terribly wrong was unfolding out there in the countryside. Warden Haas, for instance, turned out to not really be a warden at all. He was a commandant. And the commandant was not merely a sadist. He was a sadist hired by a lunatic and put in charge of the worst prison ever built, a prison called Auschwitz. In the early days of the war, the Allies were oblivious to the horror of Auschwitz. But Witold Pilecki was not. He knew what was going on behind those gray walls out in the Polish countryside. He'd seen thousands of prisoners enter and none come out. He knew the smokestacks burned round the clock, and he'd seen the terrible ash falling from the sky. But to prove the horror of Auschwitz to the Allies, Witt had to do more than just escape. He had to first get captured on purpose. That's the most incredible part of an incredible story. Before escaping from hell, Witold Pilecki volunteered to go there. Honestly, I'm not sure what Hollywood is waiting for. There's even an ironic twist at the end. 2 years after his escape, Witt was spying again, this time on the Soviets, who now controlled his country. He was captured, tried, and tortured. The communists were no friends of the Nazis, but they didn't care about Witt's courage or his role in defeating the Germans. And so, the Auschwitz volunteer was executed for spying in 1948. Then his name was erased from history until the Berlin Wall finally fell. His last words were, "Long live free Poland." Now please, somebody call Steven Spielberg or Daniel Day-Lewis so the rest of the world can say, that's the way I heard it. I know, kind of heavy for a dreary and schizophrenic Sunday here in San Francisco. But if you're sick of wieners, I give you Witold Pilecki. I am now going to fill out my ballot here in the Republic of Marin, but I'm not going to send it in till the deadline, because God knows what's going to happen between now and then. Adios.
Hi, friends. Do you want to know what's happening on Haff in the Morning in between shows? Then head on over to tinyurl.com/HafterMedia and click on the Facebook button. It's located in the upper right-hand corner of the screen.
Let me get this straight, Donald Trump. If I'm flat-chested, I'm not a 10. If I get pregnant, it's an inconvenience for my employer. If I'm breastfeeding, I'm disgusting. If I have an abortion, I should be punished. If I'm a wife, I shouldn't work because that's dangerous. And you're asking for my vote? Go to womencanstoptrump.com, take the pledge, share this video, and most importantly, vote on November 8th. Because if women vote together, we can and will stop Trump.
October 31st, 1517.
Ein feste Burg ist unser Gott.
In Germany, the start of the Protestant Reformation as the priest Martin Luther takes a stand. He posts the 95 Theses on the door of Wittenberg Palace Church, questioning Catholic Church practices. 1968, President Lyndon B. Johnson orders a halt to all U.S. bombing of North Vietnam. Johnson says he hopes the move spurs fruitful peace negotiations to end the Vietnam War.
I have reached this decision on the basis of the developments in the Paris talks. And I have reached it in the belief that this action can lead to progress toward a peaceful settlement of the Vietnamese War.
But the war rages for more than another 4 years before a ceasefire agreement is finally reached. 1984. In India, 2 Sikh security guards of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi assassinate her. It happens months after Gandhi orders a deadly attack on the Sikhs' holiest shrine to crack down on Sikh militants. And 1926. In Detroit, magician Harry Houdini dies of gangrene and peritonitis resulting from a ruptured appendix. Houdini became ill after a student had struck him in the stomach in his dressing room days earlier. Today in history, October 31st. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
The Writer's Almanac is supported by the Poetry Foundation, publisher of Poetry Magazine, a monthly devoted to discovering and publishing new voices in poetry. More at poetryfoundation.org.
And here is the Writer's Almanac for Monday. It's the 31st of October, 2016. Halloween originated in the Celtic festival of Samhain, held around November 1st, marked the end of summer, beginning of winter, biggest holiday of the Celtic year when animals were brought in from the pasture, made secure for the coming winters. Some were slaughtered, and the spirits of the dearly departed were more easily able to return to their earthly homes, or so it was thought. It was blended in with a Christian holiday known as All Saints' Day, a time for believers to honor those who had passed on to heaven. The early Christian leaders told their missionaries that if they wanted to convert pagans to Christianity, they shouldn't waste time trying to suppress their pagan rituals and practices. They should incorporate them wherever possible, which had the effect of establishing Christianity among the pagans, but it also preserved many of the pagan practices, including the practice of what was called souling, S-O-U-L-I-N-G. In Britain, Ireland, Middle Ages, poor people going door to door on Hollow Mass, offering to pray for the souls of the dead in exchange for the offering of food, which was combined with the practice of mumming, dressing up in costumes in exchange for food and drink. It was on this date, 1913, the Lincoln Highway was dedicated, the first automobile highway to traverse the entire continental United States from Times Square in New York City to Lincoln Park in San Francisco. Cost about $10 million back then. It's the birthday of the journalist Susan Arleon, born in Cleveland, 1955, author of The Orchid Thief, Rin Tin Tin, the life and legend about the famous Hollywood German Shepherd. And it's the birthday of the poet John Keats, born Finsbury Pavement near London, 1795. Father was a stable keeper, died when Keats was 8, and when he was a teenager his mother died of tuberculosis, which was the disease that would later kill his brother Tom and eventually Keats himself at the age of 25. When he was 22, he moved to a friend's house in the country, hoping it would make him better. He lived next door to a beautiful young woman named Fanny Braun, fell in love with her, and in love, knowing he was sick, in just a few months he wrote most of the poems that he's famous for, including To Psyche, To a Nightingale, and On a Grecian Urn. Here's a poem for today by Mark Perlberg, Toward the Solstice. We burned our leaves on the bluest October day, the sun still warm on our backs, frost just a ghost in the shrubbery. We raked the leaves into shifting piles on the lawn, scooped them into deep round baskets, and spilled them in the street against the curb. The vein of fire, unseen at first in diamond light, whispered through oak leaves brown as butcher paper and maple, still flushed with color like maps torn from the book of knowledge. We were letting go of October, relinquishing color, readying ourselves for streets lacquered with ice, the town closed like a walnut locked inside the cold. Toward the Solstice, a poem by Mark Perlberg from The Impossible Toy Store, published by Louisiana State University Press, used by permission here on the Writer's Almanac, supported by Lumosity, with a 10-minute fit test to calculate baseline scores, and training programs with 50 challenging brain games. Learn more at lumosity.com. And by Staples, offering printer ink and toner cartridges for home and business, with in-store print shops offering customized presentations, booklets, and manuals. In-store and online, Staples make more happen. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch.
This is the Composer's Datebook for October 31st. I'm John Zak. Oh, it's the time of year when chains rattle, doors creak, and skeletons dance. It's Halloween, when even the classics dress up in a monster costume. This music is by the American composer Libby Larsen, a 1987 concert suite titled What the Monster Saw, inspired by Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein. Larsen says, What the Monster Saw is a musical exploration of the second part of the novel. In it, the monster confronts Frankenstein, his creator. In 1990, Larsen confronted the same monster at greater length in a full-length opera titled Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, again based on Shelley's classic tale. Speaking of monster music, connoisseurs of horror films consider The Bride of Frankenstein, released by Universal Studios in 1935, to be one of the best ever made. It featured Boris Karloff as the monster, Elsa Lanchester as his bride, and a classic film score by Franz Waxman. Waxman originally composed his Frankenstein music on a pipe organ. His score was then orchestrated for the film by one Clifford Vaughn, who translated many of the organ's spookiest effects into eerie and effective symphonic colors. So successfully, in fact, that their creation refused to die. Bleeding chunks of the film score were transplanted into dozens of subsequent Universal Studios thrillers and movie serials. Dr. Frankenstein would have been proud. For more information of Larsen and Waxman, check out our website, composersdatebook.org. Composer's Datebook is produced by APM, American Public Media, and the American Composers Forum, reminding you that all music was once new.
Listening to a PM edition of Haff in the Morning on Halloween night, 2016. It's a Monday, and coming up in just a moment, I'll have the Osgood File along with the Dave Ross Show. And before I talk about my next story, yesterday I was watching one of my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movies on BBC America, the original Psycho from 1960. All the years that I've watched that movie, I never caught it until yesterday. I never really put two and two together. In the scene where Norman Bates is pushing Marion's car into the pond, keep in mind this scene takes place in December, mid-December, in Los Angeles, California, okay? But it's a little bit warmer than it is, say, here in the Midwest, obviously. But in the background, if you listen real closely, you'll hear frogs and crickets and other creatures normally associated with spring and summer. Now, keep in mind it is LA, so, maybe there might be a few of them out, but not certainly at the volume that was being portrayed in the movie. However, I mentioned that on Facebook yesterday. A friend of mine from high school asked her sister about it because she lives in the Los Angeles area and says it's not all that uncommon. Maybe not at the volume that is presented in the movie, but nevertheless, it is possible. So I just thought that was quite amusing. Well, let's see. Have some news from Fox Radio coming up in just a moment. Fox Radio News, that is. Right now, though, running from the police all night can really make one work up quite an appetite. For example, in Arizona, officers tried to pull over a 35-year-old man by the name of Joshua Adkins for an outstanding warrant. But Mr. Adkins reportedly refused to stop. A police helicopter followed Adkins as he drove through Phoenix, two suburbs, and even watched as Adkins went through an In-N-Out Burger drive-thru and appeared to order food. He eventually got out of his vehicle, ran into a backyard, and was finally arrested after allegedly trying and failing to get into a home's back door. So, I guess the moral of the story is, if you're going to commit a crime, at least have a healthy meal before you go, okay? But preferably not steal it, all right? You don't want that on your rap sheet. Well, I see you're in for burglary, arson, and, oh yeah, you also went to an In-N-Out. Hope the food was good, because you're not going to go to an In-N-Out for a long, long time. All right. Speaking of a long, long time, that was a long, long time for that joke, and it fell flat. But, I try. I've been off for a week, so my timing is a little bit off. All right. With that being said, let's find out what Charles Osgood is up to today, okay? I understand he's interested in taking a road trip. We'll find out what that's all about right now on this edition of Haff in the Morning.
The Osgood File. This is Charles Osgood. If you ever feel like driving all the way across the United States, it's relatively easy. That was not the case in the early days of the automobile. In fact, it was nearly impossible until this day in 1913, when a brand new highway came into being, the Lincoln Highway. America has lots of famous roads. Route 66 of the New Jersey Turnpike. One that preceded them was dedicated on this day in 1913. Mindy Crawford, with the group Preservation Pennsylvania, says it was the dream of two men.
Carl Fisher, known for things like the Indianapolis Speedway and developing swampland in Florida into Miami Beach, was the owner of a company that developed car parts, headlights, batteries, and he wanted more people to ride on the highway. So he joined with his friend Henry Joy, president of the Packard Motor Company, to develop the Lincoln Highway.
It was the first road all the way across the United States, 3,389 miles when it was dedicated. You could, if your relatively primitive car didn't break down, drive all the way from New York City to San Francisco. The Lincoln Highway helped spark the country's lasting love affair with the automobile and created new possibilities for the towns and cities through which it passed. It also served as an inspiration for something greater. When Dwight Eisenhower was a young soldier in 1919, he crossed the country on the Lincoln Highway, and years later, as president, he championed the interstate highway system. Over the years, parts of the Lincoln Highway disappeared, swallowed up by new construction, or just left to decay. But there has been renewed interest in the road. The Lincoln Highway Association, established back in 1913, is now dedicated to promoting and preserving the pioneering highway. So if you're up for it, you can still drive cross-country on what's left of the Lincoln Highway. It will take a while, but it's well worth the trip. The Osgood File. This is Charles Osgood on the CBS Radio Network.
It's like a fireworks show. They always save the biggest bang for the end. Latest twist in the FBI's Hillary Clinton investigation, 650,000 more emails to go through. Found on Anthony Weiner's laptop, by which I mean the computer that he sometimes covered his lap with. Anyway, the FBI has said nothing about what may be in those emails, but Donald Trump is saying, I told you so, and about all Secretary Clinton can do is demand that the FBI release everything it has. However, in reviewing the email story, I noticed that back on June 1st, when Republicans demanded that the State Department release some 450,000 pages of records, officials said it would take approximately 75 years. According to scientists, in 75 years, the runways at Reagan National Airport will be underwater, which could explain all the sandbagging that's been going on. Bottom line, we're probably going to have to vote without knowing anything more than we do now. Although, there's still a week left. Anything can happen. Maybe the Mexican government will hack Trump's tax return. That's the crazy world we live in. The world is so crazy that last night in the World Series, I saw the Cubs win thanks to a guy named David Ross.
Throw by Ross. In time, David Ross ends the top of the sixth.
His job seems like a lot more fun than mine.
Fox News Radio, I'm Jane Metzler. Special FBI software now in the process of reviewing 650,000 emails discovered on a laptop shared by Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin and her estranged husband, Anthony Weiner. Weiner's legal team telling Fox those emails wound up on the computer inadvertently when Abedin was downloading her cell phone contact list. The FBI director informed key members of Congress those emails may be relevant to the Clinton investigation. During a rally at Kent State University in Ohio today, Clinton saying the FBI should review what's on that laptop.
I am sure they will reach the same conclusion they did when they looked at my emails for the last year. There is no case here.
Donald Trump making Clinton's email issues a major campaign theme.
Donald Trump today suggested that there may be impeachment ahead should Clinton actually win the election.
Her election would mire our government and our country in a constitutional crisis that we cannot afford.
Trump today praised FBI Director James Comey, despite the fact that he'd been criticizing the FBI and the Department of Justice for months, calling them corrupt and helping Hillary Clinton rig the election. Now Trump says Comey's shown guts and has to stick to it despite all the pressure that he's under.
Fox's Carl Cameron in Warren, Michigan. The New York Times, meantime, reporting that Donald Trump avoided reporting hundreds of millions of dollars in taxable income by using a tax avoidance maneuver so legally dubious that his own attorneys advised against it. Trump has claimed he took advantage of existing loopholes to avoid paying taxes. One expert said the loophole wasn't just exploited, it was stretched beyond recognition. Fox News Radio, fair and balanced.
Insult women. It's all talk.
Well, here we go again.
It's really bad judgment.
Issues, not insults.
She should be ashamed of herself.
The time for talk is over. Now it's America's turn to make its voice heard. Fox News Channel has election night covered, fair and balanced, up-to-the-minute exit polls, breaking race results, and powerful analysis from the best team in politics. Plus, it all happens live from our new state-of-the-art studio. Fox News Channel has election night covered because we are America's election headquarters.
In-depth, insightful, intelligent. Get it all. Tune in 10 a.m. Eastern to Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo on Fox News Channel. Every Sunday, Maria's sitting down with the biggest players in Washington and Wall Street, asking the tough questions and bringing a new perspective on the nation's most pressing issues. Every Sunday, tune in 10 a.m. Eastern to Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo on Fox News Channel. Don't miss it.
A gasoline pipeline exploded and caught fire today in West Shelby County, Alabama, injuring at least 5 workers. The pipeline now shut down. Independent presidential candidate Evan McMullin, who's drawing votes away from Donald Trump in the state of Utah, is criticizing the candidate for a robocall going out starting tonight. It's from William Johnson, a white nationalist Trump supporter who calls McMullin a devout Mormon, a closet homosexual, and an open borders amnesty supporter. McMullin calls it another desperate attempt by Trump and his racist supporters. 37 states allow early voting. This weekend, California saw record turnout and some very long lines.
Election officials in San Francisco and Los Angeles say they had record turnout for early voting this past weekend. In Los Angeles, 6 locations were open, including one in North Hollywood, where people had to wait up to an hour to vote.
I have not seen this type of turnout for a presidential election since I was able to start voting.
Now, Brenda Duran with the LA County Registrar says they usually have their main office open for early voting on weekends a few weeks before Election Day.
What we did this year that was new was that we opened these 5 additional locations all through LA County to make it more convenient for people in other locations.
The Registrar Recorder in San Francisco said 700 people showed up at City Hall to vote Saturday. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
More than 23 million early votes have been cast so far nationwide, far higher than this time in 2012. It's estimated that 40% of Americans will vote before Election Day. No early voting in Pennsylvania and some tight rules for casting absentee ballots. Given all that, concern a possible transit strike could make it tough for Philly voters to get to the polls. Workers are set to walk off the job at midnight. I'm Jane Metzler, Fox News Radio.
I'll have the Marketplace Tech program for you in just a moment from NPR. In the meantime, I'm thinking, if Hillary Clinton is elected president, which seems a very strong probability, that the Secret Service's nickname for her husband will be Weatherman, because he'll always be asking if the coast is clear.
This Marketplace podcast is brought to you by Wix. A great business needs a stunning website, and with Wix.com, you can do it all by yourself. Add your images, videos, text, and social media. It's easy to look stunning online. Go to Wix.com now. It's easy and free. That's Wix.com.
It's Marketplace Tech for October 31st. I'm Ben Johnson in New York. Last week, Uber and its self-driving truck subsidiary Otto announced that one of the company's autonomous truck test vehicles had driven 120 miles across Colorado and delivered 2,000 cases of Budweiser. Precious cargo, sure, maybe should have been Coors. The real self-driving action right now, though, is happening in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a small fleet of self-driving Uber cars have been picking up human riders. When this was announced some weeks back, a lot of people were surprised it wasn't happening in a bigger tech city like New York, Boston, or San Francisco. Not the city's mayor, though, Bill Peduto. Peduto has pushed innovation in the city of Carnegie Mellon, so we got him up on the line for a chat. Mayor Peduto, thanks for talking with us. Tell us about the origin of this Uber partnership.
I guess first conversation was about 18 months ago with their CEO. And Pittsburgh was chosen because really 30 years we've been leading in robotics. Back in 1979, when the steel industry collapsed, Carnegie Mellon University created the first robotics program in the world. So Uber saw the talent that was here, saw the topographical nature of the city, and saw a willingness of the government and others to work with them.
What about people, including non-Uber passengers, who might get caught in an accident? They didn't necessarily ask for this.
Yeah, that if somebody is involved and there was an error done by a sensor and they were put in harm's way, is that fair to them? The data that has come out with the number of miles where autonomous vehicles have been driven, which is in the millions, is a small percentage of error compared to the error that happens with a human being. Will there be errors? Yes. But to assume that something would be 100% fail-safe, we would never have cured polio. Yes, there is a risk factor that is involved, but the progress of man for almost everything has been based upon that risk.
You've said that it's, quote, not our role to throw up regulations or limit companies like Uber, end quote. But you're a career government official, right? So you don't think part of the government's job is to protect citizens from negative impact or potential negative impact of new tech?
I'm probably one of the starting lefties in Western Pennsylvania politics. I also understand that I'm 52. My entire life, I watched my city shrink. And now Pittsburgh is starting to grow. And this is where the world is going. And there will be regulations. But the regulations need to be more hand in hand than at the very beginning in stifling what could potentially be a game changer when it comes to urban mobility.
You're on the city's celebrity hockey team, I hear.
Yep.
How is hockey like heading up a city government or dealing with new technology?
You always have to watch behind your head. They're both contact sports. I mean, government is, but I'll tell you this too. There is great teamwork. So we learn from each other, mayors from around the country and around the world.
We can hope. Bill Peduto, he is the mayor of Pittsburgh. Bill, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you, Ben.
Our conversation covered a lot more ground, and you can find the full interview at marketplacetech.org. True story. It's Halloween. Do you have a costume yet? Does it involve technology? Well, we've some good news for slackers. We're going to talk now about some last-minute techie solutions with Zoe Washington Sheff, senior style editor at the website and digital firm Brit & Company, which focuses on creativity and DIY crafts. Zoe, you got some tips for us?
Well, one of the ways that I love techifying my Halloween costume is to incorporate any kind of lights. So that can be anything from, I'm going to be a Christmas tree for Halloween, or I'm going to be the Northern Lights.
But how do you actually do that, like at the last minute? Is it like a battery pack and just like plugging this stuff in, or what's going on?
For lights, you just go straight to Target or to your local Ace Hardware, and you grab your typical holiday lights and stream them along your costume. And then you can just have one of those portable battery packs. So that's always a great way to do it. And then tech is also infused in the costume in the planning process rather than the actual costume itself. So like at Brit & Co., we have a really great Halloween bot. So you can go on our site and type in where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how old you are, and we will generate the most appropriate costume for you.
Have you plugged yourself into this?
What it told me was that I needed to do something fashion forward. So fashion icons are really big. Grace Coddington from Vogue, Anna Wintour, Karl Lagerfeld, Coco Chanel, all the fashion icons.
Can we put Bowie in there?
Of course, Bowie and
Okay.
Prince.
Yeah.
You will see a lot of Bowie and Prince come Halloween night.
How big of an impact has the internet writ large had on Halloween costumes and the Halloween costume business? I'm talking memes, needing to keep costumes like kind of in the moment, things like that.
The internet really just makes it a lot easier to source what people are talking about. So,
Right.
It's you're in on the joke, whereas before for Halloween, it was more about being punny. Now it's about playing on everyday current events, and the internet is, absolutely endless when it comes to that.
Zoe Washington Sheff is senior style editor at the digital media site Brit & Company. Zoe, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you probably remember we have been asking you about your techie costumes this year. We got some great submissions. Here is Adam Shuttleworth of Southern California.
My costume is a crossover between a Halo helmet and a Star Wars Mandalorian armor. I built it using paper covered in fiberglass for the helmet. I used metal plates for the armor, and for the gauntlets, I 3D printed them.
You can find photos of that nerderific stuff at facebook.com/marketplacetech. I'm Ben Johnson, and that's our show today. This is APM.
This Marketplace podcast is supported by Wix.com. A great business needs a stunning website. And with Wix.com, you can do it all by yourself. Wix makes it easy to look amazing online no matter what type of business you're in. Show off your images with a beautiful gallery, grow your contact list, and put all your social media in one place. Your customers are going to love it. So what are you waiting for? Show the world what you can do. Go to Wix.com and create your own stunning website today. It's easy and free. That's Wix, Wix.com.
And I'm Joe Hafner. You're listening to an evening edition of Haff in the Morning on Halloween Day 2016. And I'm about to wrap up the program for today. I'll be back on tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in our normal time spot. And before I go, I want to play this. I want to give equal time to bashing the candidates.
The kinds of kids that are called super predators, we have to bring them to heel. Super predators, no conscience, no empathy, super predators, we have to bring them to heel. Super predators, no conscience, no empathy, super predators, super predators, super predators, super predators, super predators, we have to bring them to heel. Super predators, no conscience, no empathy, super predators, we have to bring them to heel. Super predators, no conscience, no empathy. Super predators, 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 super predators.
And there you have it, my friends. Equal airtime on this edition of Haff in the Morning. Well, as I said, it's going to wrap it up for the program today. Be sure to check out my website in a couple of hours. It's the Halloween theme is going to be gone for another year, and have the Thanksgiving theme coming up around midnight Central Daylight Time. So be sure to check it out. tinyurl.com/HafnerMedia. Also, drop me an email anytime you wish at haffinthemorning@gmail.com. That's HAFFinthemorning@gmail.com. And that's going to wrap up for the program today. I have nothing witty to say other than this. My time is up. Thank you for yours.
God bless America.
Back over the sweep of this campaign, going back to last June, is there anything you regret?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to have done certain things over, but you can't. You can't. But that's true in life. I'd love to have done in life certain things over, I guess. And you would have too.
Give me one.
You would have loved not to have contributed to the Clinton Foundation, as an example. There are things that you wish you didn't do, okay?
His job seems like a lot more fun than mine.